Can you see my screen? Yeah, if someone can confirm if you can see. Okay, great. Thanks a lot. So let's start. So always for any particular system design, there are four subparts which you should consider. The first part which you need to consider is the requirements part. Okay. So for every system design, first you should do the requirements gathering. Okay. Once you do the requirements gathering, then you come up and talk about all the estimations so that you can design your system accordingly. And once you're done with the estimations, then you actually, so in the estimations, generally you talk about, what are the QPS estimations, basically query per seconds, and what is the capacity estimation, like for next 1 year, how much capacity your system will need to store the data. And once you are done with the estimations of estimations as well, then you move to a detailed design where you talk about bunch of different things, like you talk about all the APIs which you need. You will talk about overall system data, system modeling, how you model your system. You will talk about load balancers. You will talk about sharding. You will talk about your database and what are the tables you require to store this data. Then if there is any caching required, then you talk about caching. You talk about authentication authorization if any authentication authorization is required. Then you talk about basically load balancing, as I already mentioned, and you cover all these things in detail as a part of your high level design. Correct. So we talk about scaling, we talk about replications as well as a part of high level design, detailed design. And after that, the fourth subpart is monitoring and alerting and backups. Basically, you should be able to figure out if there is any issue going on in your system. So that's why you talk about monitoring and alerting, like what kind of monitoring system do you need? What kind of alerting system do you need? Correct. If you need need to draw some metrics, then how should you do a backup of your data? So you talk about all those details as a part of the system design. So there are four subparts. So the first part is requirements. Second is estimation. The third one is detailed design. And the fourth part is monitoring, alerting, alerting, and backup. These are the four major parts which we should talk about, and then there will be subparts within these major parts as well. Okay, so let's call these as our subtitles, and let's try to do some estimations around these. Okay, so let's start with the requirement gathering. So when I talk about requirement gathering, there are two subparts of requirement gathering. The first part is your, the first part is you have to come up with the functional requirements. Now, can anyone tell me what are functional requirements? If anyone of you is aware of functional requirements. Okay, let me explain you what are functional requirements. So let's talk about functional requirements. Yeah, functional requirements. So functional requirements are the requirements which are generally collected by the end users. Okay, these are the requirements which are collected by end users. So basically, in this case, what do we want to do? We want to design a calendar. So what all requirements should we have as a part of the calendar? So let's start with the very basic functionalities which we require in the calendar. So one is you should be able to create an event on calendar. Correct. So you should be able to create an event on the calendar. What is the next requirement? You can put it on the chat if you can think of any requirement. So this is our first requirement, create an event on the calendar. What else you should be able to do? Share the event. So basically you should be able to send the invite to people, right? So you should be able to send the invite to the people, correct? So send the invite, right, to people for the meeting. What else you should be able to do? Anything else which you want to include as a part of this? We should be able to send, we should be able to look up, right? Look up all the meetings on the calendar. Correct? What else do we need apart from this? Anything else which you can think of? So you should be able to cancel the meeting. You should be able to modify the meeting. You should be able to send the reminder. So let's include all these as well. So we should be able to send the reminder. Send the reminder before 30 minutes of the meeting. And we should be able to cancel the meeting. And we should be able to modify meeting. Let's work on only these requirements. See, if we'll keep on adding requirements, then our design will become very complex, and you should be careful about these things in your interview as well. So don't try to have like so many requirements. Try to have minimum scope as minimum as possible, and try to design on the top of it, because that will help you to cover everything in depth. If you take so many requirements, then you might not be able to cover all the parts in detail, and then you might ruin your interview. So make sure that you don't take like lot of requirements, but the basic requirements should be covered as a part of your functional requirements. Now let's try to talk about the here I'm not adding a check availability for now. I'm assuming that we are designing a very simple calendar, but yeah, you can add the check availability as well if required. Let's put check availability. Let's put that is out of scope for now. Availability of other members. Correct. But I'll put this out of scope for now. And if the time permit, we'll design on for this as well. Okay. So we have done this. So these are our functional requirements. Now, if I ask you that, we need to, does anyone of you know what are non-functional requirements? Non-functional requirements are generally decided by the engineers. Okay. So basically, these are the requirements which you should consider while designing your overall system. Correct. If you don't consider these requirements, then it might hamper the overall experience of your end user. Correct. Decided by engineers. Okay. So what are the non-functional requirements you should have? So the non-functional requirements, the first thing which you talk about is availability. Okay. Availability should be high. Correct. Your system should be highly available. Correct. You should be able to. So basically what it means is that like when you try to create an event, you should be able to successfully create an event. When the notifications are sent, it should be, you should be able to send the notifications as well. If you modify or cancel the event, then it should work. Right? The system should not fail. We can say that it should have 5 nines. Now I'm not going into details of 5 nines, but if anyone of you is already aware of it, then you can understand that basically your system should not be down for more than 5 minutes in a year. Okay. You're guaranteeing that. Then you talk about consistency. Now, some of you might have heard about the CAP theorem, where you can't get in a distributed system environment. I'm saying in a distributed system environment where there are multiple systems and they are connecting with each other through network. You can't get availability and consistency together because you always need a partition tolerance. If you're not aware of CAP theorem, it's totally okay. So basically for now, what you can try to understand is either you can get a consistency or availability. So you'll have to trade one over the other. And it doesn't mean that if you trade availability over consistency, then you won't get the availability. It just means that my system might not be available for like few seconds. Okay. And it's other way around as well. If you get the availability, but you might not get the consistency. So it means that your system might not be consistent for a few seconds, right? If some user is seeing something on their calendar and some other user is not seeing that on their calendar for like a second or two. But in this case, what we want is like, if I'm adding all my members, right, in the meeting, then the invite should be sent to all of those together. If I'm canceling the meeting, then it should be canceled for all of those immediately at the same time. If I have to modify the meeting, then the modified invite should be sent to all of those at the same time. So I'll prefer consistency over availability in this particular design. So I'll write prefer I'll write trade availability over consistency for this design. Okay. Then you talk about the latency. So latency of your system should be low. So low latency of the system. Okay. I mean, you should be able to get the response very quickly. And reliability. So your system should be reliable. So basically, you should be able to maintain the data of all the users, maintain data of all the users, correct? Your system should respond as expected, correct? There can be bunch of other reliability aspects which you can consider for your design. Now, once you are done with the requirements, so you should not take more than 5 to 7 minutes to come up with all the requirements of your system, right? You should be able to come up with the requirements, all these requirements within 4 to 5 minutes. You should not take more than that much of time. Okay. Now, basically, there can be other things which are mentioned by people as a part of non-functional. So you can say that overall performance you can talk about, the security aspect you can talk about, but again, try to finish off this part within 5 to 7 minutes. Okay. Spending so much time will actually, will hamper your, which you won't be able to enough. If you spend so much time on requirements gathering, then it will take up your detailed design time. So be careful about that and try to come up with all the requirements within, 5 to 7 minutes for your first part. Then you do estimations. Again, you should spend around 5 to 7 minutes, and let's see how to do the estimations. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, there are two parts of estimation which you should talk about. The first part is your capacity planning. So we'll talk about capacity planning. And then we'll do a QPS planning. So there are two parts, as I mentioned. The first part is capacity planning, and the second part is QPS planning. Now, for the capacity planning, you should know how many, you have to make some assumptions. So for what you do is you make some assumptions that for how many users you are designing this, correct? So can I say that assume that the system is designed, we are designing this system is designed for how many users? Tell me. For users. Let's say for how many users? Okay. Some numbers, if you want to throw, you can put it on the chat. Let's say 10K is very less. Let's say we are designing it for 100 million users. Okay. Let's assume that we are designing this system for 100 million users. So I'm assuming that we are designing the system for 100 million users. Now, not all of those will be daily active users, right? So I'll put daily active users will be how many? Let's say 20% of them are daily active users. So we'll say that 20 million daily active. Okay. So this is the assumption which you have made, correct? Now I'll make another assumption. So we can say that on an average, a person, an active user will schedule 3 meetings in a day. Okay. And I'm saying that on an average, an active user will receive so there can be, see, it could be possible that there are like less number of users who are scheduling the meetings, and there are more number of users who are receiving the meetings for the later day as well, right? So on an average, an active user, correct, will receive 5 meetings invite, or we can say that 2 meetings here and 4 meetings here. Okay. Or you can do on an average, a user will receive 4 meeting invites, correct? So this is 20 million daily active users who are creating the event. And we can say that there are approximately 40 million users who are receiving the events on a daily basis. Okay. So daily active users for creating. Okay. So these are the assumptions which we have taken. Okay. I hope there are no confusions here. I'll stop here, and if you have any questions, please ask. Otherwise, we'll move forward from here. See, you can do, so someone is asking if these are part of the requirements or not. So you can put it as a part of the requirement as well. There is no problem with that. But basically you talk about, these things as a part of your, estimations. So you can ask these questions from your interviewer as a part of your estimations as well. So you can put that you can say that you have to design this for 100 million users. So that can be a part of your functional requirement. Okay. But you can put it as a part of your estimations as well. So either way, either way it is fine. Okay. Now see, we have to do capacity planning. Correct. So we generally do the capacity planning for the main part, right? Where you will receive, for which you have to store like a lot of data. So I'm assuming that, see, there are two kinds of things which you'll have to store. We need to know the users, right? So user details you'll have to store. And what else we need to store? We need to store calendar invites. Correct. Correct. All these details. So we are saying that we have how many users? We have 100 million users. Correct. And how many calendar invites we have? So we are getting around what, on an average 2 meetings. And these are scheduled by 20 million users on a daily basis. So 2 meetings into 20 million users for 365 days. Correct. So these are the number of invites we have. Correct. And here, these are the number of users we have. Correct. Now, what all details we'll have to store about for the user? So we might have to store some basic details about the users, right? Like what is their name, all those. Basically, we can say that we can assume that you'll store around 1,000 bytes of data for a particular user. Correct. And there are 100 million users in a year. Let's say the number of users are 100 million, and we are saying that you started with 100 million, and this number will grow to, like, it will become 200 million in next 1 year, right? So you can say that for this, because you started with 100 million and the data is growing, so by end of the year you will have 200 million users. So can I say that how much data I'll have to store? So can I say that total, just a second, I have to, the people still joining. Yeah. So the total, how many bytes you'll have to store? So total, so sorry guys. Yeah. I'm still receiving the invites to join. Anyways, so total number of users are 100 million, 200. So I'm writing here by end of year, 200 million users will have. So total data we'll have to store will be 200 million into 1,000 bytes, correct? Now, can I say that this is equal to what? 200 into 10 to the power 9, correct? Because million is 6. Now, can I say that in 1 KB there are around 1,000 bytes? In 1 MB there are around 1,000 KBs, and in 1 GB there are around 1,000 MBs, correct? So can I say that this is equal to what? 200 GB, right? This is for an year, correct? This is for an year. I say in an year, correct? Now, same thing you'll do for the calendar invites, right? So for 1 year, you're assuming that approximately 20 million users will schedule on an average 2 meetings in a day, and you will do it for 365 days, correct? So in a year, how much data will have to store? And you say that for an invite, you will again you might be taking around what, 200 bytes to store the details about an invite. Okay. Because what will you store? You will say some meeting ID and then the participant's ID and some metadata. So 200 bytes are more than enough, right? So now we can say that so total will be what? Equal to 2 into, so this will become what? 40 million into 365. So I'm approximating this to 400 into, let's say, 200 bytes of data. So this will become what? Can I say 4 into 4 is 416 into 2 is 32? 32 into how many zeros? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So into 10 to the power 11 zeros. Correct? Correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is 6. Now this will become what? So this will be equal to what? Can I say this will be equal to 3200 GB? Correct. 3200 GB because 10 to the power 9. So this will become 3200 GB. So can I say that the total space in a year you are storing is 3200 GB for this plus 200 GB for other for the user details. So that comes out to be what? 3.4 TB. Correct. Anyone, any confusion here? Any one of you? Okay, there are some questions. Let's try to answer those questions first. So yes, so there are a couple of questions. So first question was 5 minutes in a year. Does that include scheduling maintenance downtime as well? Yes, it does mean it does include that scheduling maintenance downtime as well. Ideally, your application should never go down, right? You might not have seen Google Calendar going down. Like it could go down because there is some issue, but in general, you guarantee that even if you are having some maintenance, right? There should not be any downtime. Correct. There should be a way to do a maintenance without doing any downtime. Correct. So you should guarantee for that. Correct. And wouldn't the number of scheduled meetings in a day be 2 into 20, 40 million? You mentioned 20 millions. That's why same for the invites received. See, I'm saying that 40 million users are receiving, correct, the invite. So you mentioned 20 million. That's why I say. So I've done that, right? I have written 2 into 20 million. If you'll see here, I've written 2 into 20 million because 20 million users scheduling meetings on an average. So that's why it became 2 into 20. That is 40 million. And then we are doing this. Someone mentioned that this is what, have I made any mistake? 4 into 4, 16 to the 32 and 10 to the power 5 bytes. So these are all bytes. Correct. So this will become 32 into 10 to the power 11 bytes, which is equal to what? I can write it as 3200 into 10 to the power 9 bytes. So that will be 3200 GB only, right? Why 32? I don't know. There is something wrong. Yeah, we'll come on to our applications and everything. And we'll come on to backup as well. Don't worry about that. This is the this is the space which we need for the real traffic. Correct. And if you'll create more, if you'll create the applications, then we'll definitely need more space. So let's say if you're creating 5 applications, then you can simply say that 3.4 into 5. So that will be the replication. So that depends on the replications. But I'm saying that this is the capacity planning based on just for the live traffic, considering that you have to store like data for each of the user only once. Correct. If you do replications, it depends on how many times you're doing a replication of a particular data, right? So, we are doing the capacity planning to store the user data and the calendar invites. I'm not saying that this is the data which you require to, this is the final memory which you require for your system. That is not the case. This I'm saying that capacity planning you're doing to store all the users data as well as all the calendar invites. Now let's talk about the QPS planning. So in general, in QPS, there are 2 things which you talk about. The first is read QPS and the second one is write QPS. Okay. So there is a read QPS and then there is a write QPS. Now, what will be the read QPS? What are the APIs which might have? And then we'll go to the details and if looking at our requirements, see what all things we can do. So create an event will go as a part of the write QPS, correct? Sending an invite is, you can say that someone will look at the invite, right, later on. So you can say that this is like finally we have to send the invite. So it is like a write again, we have to send the invite to someone, right? So it is not read or write, it is like sending the notification, correct? Now look up all the meetings. So this is my read, send the reminder. It is like a notification. Cancel meeting is write, modify meeting is write, check availability of other members is read. So what is read for us? So read is basically create, cancel, and modify. These are the rights. Sorry, these are the rights for us. So I should put it as a part of the right. My bad. And what are the reads? So basically, read is check invites, check availability. We have not considered check availability as a part of our main scope, but let's design it for now. So we have check invites and check availability, correct? And so these are the two main read QPS and these are the write QPS which we have, correct? Now see, we are saying that how many events are created on an average in a day? 40 million, see 20 million daily active, and they're sending that. So 40 million, correct? 40 million in a day are the create. So create are what? 40 million in a day, correct? How many of them will be cancelled? So can I say that 10% of it will be cancelled? So can I say 4 million cancel? And how many of them? Again 10%, so 4 million. So can I say that approximately is it equal to 50 million? I'm approximating this. Okay. Ideally, you should approximate this because your estimations might not be very correct. In this case as well, you can put a multiplier factor on the top of this. You can say that I'll approximate this to 4 PV. Just to make sure that you don't cross your threshold values when you're designing things. So you say that you put a multiplier factor of something like 1.2, 1.3, and that's why you're getting 4 TB. Here also you put some, I've added like it was 48 million, I approximated this to 50 million. This is my write. These many events I'll write in a day. Now, how many events I'll do in a, so basically I'll check the calendar or check invite, correct? So basically how many 40 million users will be checking their calendar on a daily basis, correct? So can I say that 40 million users, and on an average, let's say they check their calendar twice in a day, correct? And you might check the availability of some of the users when you're sending the invite, right? So basically you might add all the users and then you will check the availability of all those users, right? So on an average, you're creating 40 million. So 40 million events, and on an average you check available, and the meeting is with 3 people. So on an average, can I say that I'll check availability of 3 people in every invite, basically before sending the invite. So 40 million into 3 and 40 million into 2. So this comes out to be what? Did you understand how this 40 million? This is basically invites received, right? So they might check their calendar multiple times in a day, right? So 2 times in a day, right? And here I am saying 40 million because these are the number of events created, right? And on an average for each events created in a day. And on an average, I'm saying that 3 times you will check the availability for 3 people, right? So check availability of 3 users for an invite. Okay. So this comes out to be what? 40 million into 2, that is 80 million plus 40 million, that is, so this comes out to be 200 million. Correct. Now let's try to do estimation. So this is in a day. Everything is in a day. So what we have to do, we have to calculate per second, right? So can I say 50 million divided by, in a day we have 86400 seconds. So can I say that 50 million is 50 into 10 to the power 6 divided by, can I approximate 86400 to what? 10 to the power 5. Correct. So this comes out to be what? 500. Correct. And this is more 4 times. So this was 50 million. This was 200 million. So this was 4 times, right? So this will be what? The QPS will be what? Equal to 200, 2000. Yeah. Here it will be, QPS will be equal to 50 million divided by this. And so this will be 500. Okay, I'll stop here for a minute, for 30 seconds, and let's see if you have any questions and try to take those questions. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next part. Okay, nice. So I hope I'm assuming that all these parts are clear. Now let's try to think about what all APIs do we need and how do you design that, correct? So let's go to our detailed design. Correct. So we have done the estimations, we have done the requirements. Let's try to figure out all the APIs which we need in case of this. So let's put APIs which we need. Okay. So let's start putting. So first is, let's start putting all the APIs which we have. So create event, send invite, correct? So can I say that in the event itself, I'll have the invite create event as the one which will take input of what? Bunch of input like event details and list of user IDs to which we have to send the invite, correct? So this will be your input for the create event, correct? Event details will contain like what if there is any, it's an online event or an offline event, at what time it is, and basically other details like what is the meeting, online meeting link to which you can join the meeting. And basically if you have to share some document or something, then it will go as a part of the event details. So all those will go as a part of create event. Then what else do we have? Create event is done. Send the invite. So automatically once you create an event, there should be some system which should handle to send the invite. Then look up all meetings. So can I say that check calendar, my calendar, check calendar. Here, what do you put to check a calendar? What do you need to put? You just need to put what? The user ID, right? For which you have to check the calendar. Correct. You put the, so if you have to check the availability, check the calendar of other people as well, you can use the same calendar and you just need to put the user ID of that particular user, right? And similarly for your calendar as well, you will have to just put your user ID. Correct. So this is another one. Then what else do we have? Then we have send the reminder. So that should be taken care internally by the system. Then cancel and modify meeting, correct? So we'll have this, the next API is cancel meeting. Can I say that update meeting? Update meeting. And it should take what? It should take event details. Correct. And list of user IDs. For which these, I mean, it could be possible that you want to add more users, right? The list of user IDs. What else? Like what is the status? Correct. If it is cancelled or it is updated. So you can take event status. That can be part of the event details as well. You can have a create, update, and complete. I mean, done. The meeting is complete. That we can do that as a part of, we'll do that. We'll talk about that in detail as a part of our load level design, which will be on the next week. Today, we are trying to come up with the high level design. So classes will design in the next session. Today, we are just checking all the APIs which we need. Okay. So we have create event, check calendar, and then update meeting. Do we need anything else based on our, so see, send the reminder, that should happen automatically. Cancel the meeting, that should happen automatically. Sorry, modify and cancel meeting, you should be able to take, and you should be able to look up all the meetings on your calendar, right? So look up calendar. So check calendar based on the user ID. You should be able to check the calendar. Okay. So these are the APIs. Do we need any other API apart from this? Should we consider backup also? What is the QPS? Won't we read first, then write? Register user, yes. Should we consider REST constraint while writing the APIs? I mean, you can consider REST constraints. Yeah, you can say that you can design, you can say that there is it is a get API or the post API. It depends. If your interviewer push for it, then you can talk about that get, post, patch, all those things. But in general, it's okay to, it's okay to just talk about, basic APIs which you need. And you can, if you require, you can say that these are the get APIs, these are the post APIs. Okay. Now someone is saying that check calendar of other users, right? So you can use the same API for checking the calendar of other user, right? You just need to pass the user ID for that, correct? So that's it. You can have two other APIs. One is login API, but if you are designing it for Gmail, then you don't need, I mean, in general, you'll be already logged in, but you can have a login API and then you can have a registration API as well. Correct. But let's say if you are designing a new calendar altogether, right? It's not a Google calendar. and there is no Gmail associated, then you should have a register API where you can register the user. And what will be the request? Here you will pass the user ID, correct? And user password maybe. This will be in some encrypted format over the wire. And then you will have what? Oh, sorry, username. No, you will return the user ID as a part of this. Username, password, and bunch of other details. You can say user info. Right? And here in the login API, what we'll do? You'll have a username and the password. Correct. So these are the APIs which we need. Anything else? Any confusion? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions. Okay, so should we have the notify API as well? Yes, we will have the notification. We'll have the notification that will handle internally. We'll come back to that once we'll start modeling it. gRPCs or REST RPCs are better. So you can say that, I mean, it depends on the use cases. gRPCs are basically, it's a remote procedural call. And these are two different things. Don't try to relate them completely. But yeah, I mean, either way is fine. If you're sending the call, it's generally when the client is talking to the server, then you use REST APIs. And if server is talking to server, then you use remote procedural calls in that case, right? I can't go into the details of that because of the time constraint. But as I mentioned, like, you can prefer whatever I mean, it doesn't matter a lot here. In this case, maybe it's okay to go ahead with the REST APIs, have the REST endpoints. And when you're talking, your web server is talking to your application servers, then you can have RPCs in that case. Okay. Now delete event. So we are already covering delete event here, right? We are update event, update meeting event, correct? Create, we can say update event instead of update meeting. And we can say that the event status is can be marked as cancelled, right? So that can be handled with the help of update event. It's not, so it is handling both modify and delete here. Both are handled here in case of update event. Okay. So these are the APIs which you are talking about. Now let's go and talk about the tables which we need to store these details. Okay. So what are the tables we need? So definitely we need a user table, correct? We need a user table. So in the user table, what all information do we need to store? Let's talk about those, about the details of the tables. So let's go to the new page. So what are the, in the user table, what all things you need? You will need a user ID. This will be auto-generated by you. Auto-generated by you, correct? Then you will need username, correct? Then you will need password, correct? Then user info, you can have like a email ID, their phone number. Then you can have creation time. When was the user creation time? And if you want to store some other details as well, you can store as a part of the user. Let's talk about the event table. So what all details we need? Event ID, user ID of the owner who has created this, right? Or owner. And list of, so basically you can call it as invitees. This will be what? This will be list of user IDs, right? You have to maintain all the list of user IDs. People who are invited. You need a creation time. Correct. What else do you need? If there is any meeting link, then you need that meeting link. If there are any relevant doc links, then you will need that. It's a part of this. You might need a description as well. So description, I mean, relevant doc links can go as a part of description. So you can say description. What else do you need apart from this? Database, we'll talk about it. Give me some time. We'll talk about the databases as well. Okay, which database to use, SQL or NoSQL, we can talk about that in detail. Okay, give me some time. So basically, I'm just figuring out what are the details we need to store. I'm not saying that, I mean, we are using the SQL or NoSQL database here. Okay, so you talk about the meeting link. then description, then creation time, meeting link, description, and what else do we need apart from this? If you have, are we missing what at what time the meeting time, correct? Or event occurrence time. So all these data has to be stored. Now, in general, see, either you can prefer a NoSQL database or a SQL database. There are some benefits which you get as a part of the SQL database. So you get the transactions by default. By default, you have the data is very structured and you can, it's easier to query on the top of the data that is there in the NoSQL database as well. The maintenance is easier. The problem with the NoSQL database, sorry, SQL database is that you might not get availability or consistency out of the box. So you'll have to, I mean, you have to write some code to actually ensure availability or either the availability or the consistency. And the second part, which you don't get by default, is that if you're creating, basically, because it's not a, by default, you have to shard, you have to do a logical level sharding, right? Because you can't say that I can create a shard into my same system. The benefit which you get with NoSQL is you availability and consistency you can get by default. You don't need to worry about that. But the data is not very well structured, correct? It's not readable. It's not very readable as well, correct? So all those are the, so there are some benefits of NoSQL databases, but by default you will get, I mean, you'll get consistency and consistency or over the availability or availability over the consistency. Out of the box, you don't need to write anything separately. The distribution of the data, the sharding of the data can be automatically done. You don't need to write some extra logic to actually implement sharding of the data. You can just mention the strategy and it will shard the data automatically. It's easier to actually, do the horizontal scaling in case of, NoSQL databases compared to MySQL databases. But in general, what I've seen is whenever you have like a very structured data, right? And because most of the people are very familiar with the SQL databases, the companies prefer to go ahead with the SQL databases. But again, it depends on up to you whether you want to use SQL and NoSQL. Here, my preference is lying towards SQLs because here it is very structured data. And I want to maintain all these data in a proper, I mean, I should be able to, I'll be able to create the indexes on the top of it. And it will be just easier to maintain the data. And I know that my team, the team with which I'm working, they might be aware of, like most of them will be aware of SQL databases. So based on the expertise, I'll just go ahead with the SQL database. And for the sharding and replications and availability, maybe I'll write some logic out of the box, which again is not very difficult nowadays. I mean, you know that what exactly has to be done. So we'll talk about that in detail. But because we have to store these fields in a very structured format, maybe it's better to use the SQL database here. The last design which I discussed, where we were designing the Google Type Ahead system, there we preferred NoSQL database because, NoSQL databases, because that the data was not very well structured in that case. And here I am preferring SQL database because the data is very well structured. Okay. So that's why you can either go ahead with SQL or NoSQL. Again, I told you the pros and cons, and mostly you should talk about all the pros and cons during your interview as well for any database. And once you talk about, I mean, once your interviewer is, is satisfied either with SQL or NoSQL, you can take any of the route. It doesn't matter a lot. But in general, I've seen that, people prefer to tend towards SQL database because people have expertise in SQL databases. NoSQL database, there are some challenges which you face with the NoSQL databases. Basically, you need to keep in, I mean, like you don't get transactions out of the box, and sometimes you want to store, like if you have multiple shards created, right? And if you want to store that as a part, I mean, you will have to put some configurations at that time. So in those cases, and if the data, basically NoSQL database, like you need to know like how exactly you need to create the data, how to store row wise, column wise. The indexes are, it's not easy to create the indexes sometimes in case of NoSQL databases. So it depends on the requirements. Here in this case, it seems like SQL database makes sense. That's why I'm going with the SQL database. In general, like the way I decide whether to use a SQL database or a NoSQL database is based on how the structure of my data is. Like if my data will change a lot in future, maybe it's better to use NoSQL databases in those cases. Okay. So yeah, occurrence time we can say, and we can have a duration as well, as someone mentioned. Correct. Or you can have, in the occurrence time, you can have a start time and the end time. Correct. So that is the events. I'm not designing anything else right now. Let's see once we'll start doing the data modeling if anything comes up. So let's talk about the data modeling. So let me try to draw some diagrams. Let me know if you can see my screen. I'll share my another. I'll share my whiteboard with all of you. Yes. So let me share the whiteboard. Yeah. Can you see my whiteboard? Okay, great. So see, we will have a client here, correct? So we can say that there is some client present here, correct? There's also another client. There can be multiple clients, right? Now, what is happening here? So first we'll put a layer of load. So this there will be a firewall for the security purpose, and then there will be a layer of load balancer. I'll call it as a load balancer. Just a second. Let me, I know that there is a lot of background noise. Just give me a second. Sorry. Yeah. Yep. I'm audible, right? Okay. So we were talking about like load balancers. So we have created a load balancer. Now, generally, what you have is first layer is always the web server layer. Okay, so you'll have web servers, and see, in general, everything will talk to your web servers. Okay, all the APIs will talk to your web servers. Correct. This layer is responsible for orchestration. What I mean by orchestration is that this layer won't have, or sometimes we call it as a front end layer as well. Okay, you can call it as a front end layer, or these are the web servers. Okay, why this is responsible for orchestration? Because you can have a microservice architecture, and this layer will receive all the requests. Okay, this layer will actually receive all the requests, and basically this layer won't contain no business logic. Here you won't have any business logic. Okay, so this layer is just responsible for orchestrating and calling the right service so that will be your backend layer. It will be responsible for calling the right set of service. Okay, there is one more thing. So you do all the authentication authorizations are done at this particular layer. So this layer is also responsible for doing all the authentication or authorization if you want to do it, if there are any authorizations in place. So you should be able to do all the authentication and authorization at this layer. There should not be any business logic, and there should be, this is the layer which will be responsible for orchestrating and calling some other services. Now again, we'll have another layer of load balancer here. I'll just write LB. And now we'll have multiple services. So here we'll need one user service, correct, which will take care of returning the user ID. So we might have multiple APIs, right? Login API, register API, and maybe get user info. So all those will part of the user service. And then there will be another service which will be calendar or event service. Or you can call it as a calendar service. Calendar event service. See, why did I create this microservice architecture? The reason behind that is that, let's say if I want to use this user service for, let's say YouTube, like if the user is logging in, if I create a monolithic server, then you can't use this service, right? Because these APIs are specific to user. So this user can be used across multiple layers. I'll give you another example. So let's say you were earlier on Uber, you were using Uber app to book a drive from one place to another place. And later on, Uber released Uber Eats as well. Now, you might want to show only the Uber rides in your Uber app, and you want to show only the orders which you have done in the Uber Eats, correct? The food delivery orders. But the user is maintained, the same user is maintained across both the apps. So the benefit which you get to have a microservice architecture is that now user can be used across multiple services, and user, I mean, it's not under the part of the same monolithic server. There are different services and different servers which you have created for the user service as well as calendar invite service. And you can have multiple instances of it. So this is just one service. There can be multiple instances. So you can say that there are n instances of this, and then there are some m instances of this. Now, if you want to log in or register, then your web server will talk to what? User service. Correct. And if you want to actually, your web server will talk to user service, and your web server will talk to calendar events when you want to schedule some event, create some event, and do something. Now see, here once you create a calendar, right, there should be some other service, right, which should take care of sending the notification. So can I call it as a notification service? This will be like a notification service, correct? Now we'll talk about this notification service in detail. Let's try to complete our design, and then after that, what we'll have? Again, we'll have a load balancer, and this load balancer will talk to our database. Okay, and you can have multiple instances of database. So you can say that this is my user database, and this is my I mean, the instance can be different. There can be multiple instances. The database can remain same. The tables can be, I mean, you can have user as well as event here, and you can have user as well as event here, right? And you can have multiple replications, and this is talking to this, and this is also talking to this, and talking to this. So there are multiple ways to communicate this with this, like this. You have multiple. Okay. Now see, let's try to think about the flow. So what will be the flow? First, user will log in, so register. So the call will go to web server, any of these web servers, correct? Client can send the request. The call will go to any of these web servers. It will see that I have to register the user. So we'll go and call the user service. If the user with that information, let's say there is some unique ID which you are maintaining, right? Let's say email ID should be unique. So then in that case, if you try to register with some another email, then you will throw the exception to the client if that is all registered. If not, then you'll register the user and you'll return the response as success. And what you'll do, you'll store that as a part of this. Now, let's say if you do a login, so again, call will go to web servers. It will check all the users for which you have to for which you have to do login. So it will do some authentication here, correct? What it will do, it will pass. So once you log in, right? So basically it will talk to user service. It will verify if you have written the same right password or not. And it will return the web token. So basically some token to the client. And this token will be passed as a part of your request in any further calls once you have logged in, correct? Because you have to do the authentication at every layer then, right? After the login API. So basically, how do you verify? You check that if the token, the user which is passed as a part of the request, and the token, and this token belongs to that user or not. If it doesn't belong to that user, then you can throw the exception. So that's how you perform the authentication. So now let's say if I have to create an event, so what we'll do, we'll send a create event API. Create event API. Here first you will pass the token for the user who is creating the event. You will pass the user ID of the user who is creating the event and event. You'll pass the event details. So let's look at our, so by the way, I can share this link with all of you. So if you want, you can open it on your side. Yeah, here I can send it. I've sent the doc link in case if you want to take a look at this. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, someone is asking that why do we need a second layer of load balancers? We need a second layer of load balancers here because there are multiple instances of the same service here, right? There will be n instances, and we want the load to be distributed in amongst all these services again, correct? This is over the network. Web server is calling this service over the network, right? So there can be multiple instances of this particular, service, this service as well, right? Correct. So we need multiple machines containing the same service. So we need a load balancer to basically divide the load between all these nodes of the service, right? And that's why we need another layer of load balancer. And here also the reason is same, right? It could be possible that you have multiple instances of the same database, correct? So that's why you need another layer of load balancer. Okay. Now see, if I have to create an event, first what I'll do, I'll get the token for which I have to do the authentication from the user service. So I'll get the token and I'll check if the user ID. So basically owner user ID should be part of the create event, right? So we have event details, list of user IDs, which will be your invitees. And you should have the user ID who is creating the correct event. So basically this will become your authentication check. So authenticating is if the user is a genuine user or not, correct? If it is a genuine user, then you allow them to create an event. Now what will you do? You will say that calendar invite you'll call calendar invite service and you will pass the list of user IDs, correct? And you will create an event for all those users here. So you store all the details of all the user IDs for which I have to create a calendar invite. Now there is one more thing, right? When you create an invite, what do you also want to do? You want to send them the notification, right? And let's say if you want to send the notification after you created an event, notification after you created an event, and also notification before 30 minutes of the event, right? 30 minutes before, correct? Now, how do you do that? If you have to create an event, how do you manage these two parts? So can I say that I can have a messaging queue here? And what this messaging queue will do is you will enter two events in this messaging queue. What will be those two events? The first event would be that deliver a message for this particular. So you'll pass the event ID. You create an event, you pass the event ID, you pass the user ID for which you have to send the event, and you pass the delivery delay of 0. Correct. So you say that this is the timestamp. This is the timestamp at which we have to send. So timestamp is current timestamp, right? You can say that the current timestamp will become your, let me write it here below actually. So what will be the messages? What will be the messages enqueued? So you can have an event ID, comma, the user ID to which I have to send the notification, comma, the timestamp. And this can be current timestamp. This is the delivery. Now what happens is that this messaging queue will deliver this message to the notification service. Correct. Now you know the user ID of this to which I have to send. So notification service will, what it will do? It will actually check what is the user email from user service. It will talk to user service. It will get the username and it will send the notification. Basically you can send, so there is this service will take care of sending the email. So this service will take care of sending email, automated email. Correct. To this particular, you have the email ID, right? So it will create an event and it will send an email to that particular user. Okay. Now there is another, you want a reminder before 30 minutes as well, right? So maybe you want to send another calendar invite. So what do you say? Sorry, email invite. So what do you say? You said the event ID and the user ID, and you know the creation time of the event. Sorry, not the creation time. You know the time, event occurrence time. That is occurrence time of the event, you know, right? You know the occurrence time. So you basically, this is again a timestamp. So you do timestamp minus this time. So that will get you the exact time. So you put the delivery of that particular timestamp. So this is 30 minutes before. Correct. Now again, this message will be delivered just before 30 minutes. Correct. And if you want, you can have another event. You can say that event ID. And basically you can send just event at which the event will start. The timestamp of event. Correct. Event timestamp. So this is, there are three invites which you have sent. Sorry, 3 notification. One is the creation time. Another one is at 30 minutes before the event time, and another one with event timestamp. And this, the mail will be sent. Now there are 2 issues with this process. Can anyone tell me what are the issues? Correct. Okay. Before I actually move forward, and see, the main business logic will be, this is your backend layer. Okay. This will contain the main business logic. Contains business logic. Now, can anyone tell me what is the issue with this events? Any one of you? Okay. So there are, see, synchronization is one part of it, but why do you care about synchronization? Is you're sending the notification, right? There should be a system which should take care of it. The problem with this is that we'll talk about the retry mechanism as well in a while. And if someone actually, yes, if someone cancels the event or if someone modify the event, then this is a problem, right? Then you will send the wrong notification. So what you should do is, you'll know the event ID, correct? You'll know that. So before notification service, what it will do is it will check the event ID. And if it is a 30 minutes before notification, it will check what is the event. We can store another type here, right? Whether it's a current timestamp notification or 30 minutes before, or the meeting timestamp notification. It will know the event ID. It will go and check the database. It will talk to calendar service, get me the details of this particular invite. And if anything has been modified in this invite, or if it has been cancelled, then you won't send the notification. You will directly act the message. Otherwise, you will send the notification. So that can be handled in the notification service. So notification service will talk to user service to get the user information for the email, and it will talk to calendar event service as well to get the event details. And if there is any modification, then you just reject these events. If there is no modification, then you don't reject these events. Now someone is asking that what happens if some delivery fails. So basically what you have is, in the messaging queue, you'll have a retry mechanism. Okay. Basically, if you are unable to deliver a message, let's say this service is down, so you can have a retry, and you can say that the way you will design the retry is, after every 10 seconds, you will try to send the notifications. So you can have like a delivery delay retry mechanism of with an you can do an exponential backoff, but here it's better to do a retry after every 10 seconds. And once you get a success, once the notification is successfully done, then you act. This notification service is actually responsible for acting this message from the messaging queue as well. Okay, so that answers your question. So notifications. So we answered that. How do we actually, we can have, because we have a messaging queue can help us to do a retry, as well as it can help us to deliver the message at a later point of time. So both of these can be handled with the help of messaging queue. Okay. Okay. How load balancing is done with SQL databases? If you're using NoSQL databases, then you need a load balancer. If you're doing a SQL database, and if you just have, you can have a master slave configuration, right? In case of SQL database as well, you might go ahead with, master slave configuration. And in that case, what do we need to do is, we'll have to have some load balancer where the load is distributed among different instances of the same basically same type of a database. How to do it? I mean, I can't go into the details. There are different strategies through which you can do a load balancing. You can say that there is a round robin process. So every time you're receiving a request, you will send it to instance 1, 2, 3, 4, then 1, 2, 3, 4 in a round robin way. Or depending on how much time it is taking for one instance to return the response. Based on that, you can decide which or the number of requests to a particular instance. Or let's say the resource size of one of the instances is smaller than another one. So accordingly, you can do. So there are a bunch of strategies through which you can send the notifications. Can be DB sharded. Someone is asking, how do we ensure resilience retry calendar service that I've already answered. Can you use delivery feature for messaging queue, but most messaging queues have an upper bound on. I mean, see, in general, you can use a delivery delay feature, correct? And there might be upper bounds, but then in that case, you should use the messaging queue where you don't have those kind of, upper bounds. So that is something, I mean, conceptually, it's a messaging queue. Now, what type of messaging queue you want to use, that depends on you. Okay. How load balancing is done with the SQL database that I've already explained. Then there is, can DB be sharded between the services in microservice architecture? You can do that. You can create a logical level shard as well amongst the database as well, like at a service layer. If you want to do it or not do it, depends on how much what is the capacity of your resource and how much data you want to store. But it can be done. There is no restriction. You can do a sharding based on microservices as well. Like you can say that you will have a separate shard altogether for a user service, and you can have a separate shard altogether for the calendar invite service. But you can keep it in the same shard as well. And I mean, you can keep it in the same. You can have different instances as well. There are some problems if you try to do it in different shards. Basically, you can't join the table, and you have to bring the data in the memory, and then only you can request for another details. So if you want, you can keep the data in the same shard as well. Otherwise, you can keep it in the different shard. Okay. Is it one LB endpoint for all the internal microservices? No, you'll have a different LB endpoints you will have different load balancer for different microservices, right? So for each microservice, you have to have a different load balancing. Yes, we are following the microservice architecture here. Yes, I think I've answered all the questions. I mean, generally, you don't need to mention like what kind of, load balancers you need. You can be very specific. I mean, you can say it's a concept, right? It depends on what algorithm you want to put on a load balancer. And also you can write the load balancer code by yourself, or you can have the hardware as a load balancer. But no one will ask you that question in the design. Should talk about type of connections to be established, messaging queue type, LB, Algo. Yeah. So basically the connection will be your HTTP connections here to here. Correct. So this can be HTTP connection. This can be your RPCs over HTTPs, because you're talking to within the services. And these are simple calls to the storage layer, right? There are no connection here as such. And for this, you're enqueuing the message. So it depends on, I mean, if messaging queue sometimes behave as a database as well. So these are again storage calls. And this can be a receiver. So this is sending the notification, sending the message or delivering the message. Or notification service can keep polling from the messaging queue. So it depends on what you're using. If you're using HTTP, you can use a HTTP to actually get if any message is to be delivered. And for sending an email, it can be again another some kind of, you're not collecting with the client, you're just sending an email. So yeah, that's it. This can be another functionality. I mean, email is another design altogether, right? You know that from and to, and then you send the email. This is another service you're using. Email as a service you're using in the system to send the email. Okay. So I hope I've answered all the questions here. There are no further confusions or questions in this. So we have talked about modification, cancellation, and all these things. So let me actually do one thing. Let me export this board and let me put it in the doc so that you can use it for your further references. Yeah. So we have designed the APIs, we have designed the table, we have done the modeling. Let me start sharing my another thing. You don't need to use WebSockets here. You don't need WebSockets here at all. I mean, you don't need to keep pushing the data from the backend to the client. So you don't need WebSockets. Yeah. So let's put this image here. Yeah. This will be helpful, I guess. So yeah, you can take a look at this here, and I'm sharing my right screen now. So yeah, you have created it here. You can go through this at a later point of time as well. Diagram. Okay. So yeah, so now we have talked about APIs. We have talked about all the tables which we need, user table and events table. And maybe we can say that we need a notification service as well, but you don't need a separate table for the notification. So you can say that you need a messaging queue. And in this messaging queue, what all things you will store? You will store event ID. You'll use the user ID to which I have to send the notification. And then you will have basically what is the event type. Event type. So you can say that the type is, or you can say that the notification, yeah, event type can be 3. The first type is basically notification type. Event notification type, I'll say. Either it can be, this can be creation, event creation time. Another notification can be event. Let's say that you can have 30 minutes before the event. And the last one is at event occurrence. These are the event notification types. This is the messaging queue. Do we need anything else in the messaging queue? I don't think so. This is enough, right? Because with the help of event ID, you can know the event. With the help of the user ID, you can know the user to which I have to send the email. Okay. Now, same thing will go for the cancel as well, right? So when you modify anything, update event, then again the invite should be sent. Again, the notification should be sent. So you can have a creation time. So basically at that time, the event was updated. So basically that is the time at which the new event of cancel is created, right? So event, you can say event timestamp, event creation, updation timestamp. Now for the cancel event, you don't need 30 minutes before and event occurrence, right? So you will not need this. And for modify event, so in the API you can do that, right? If you have modified if you have deleted the event, then you just need this one. And if you have modified the event, then you will need this one as well as this one. Correct. So this is about the messaging queue. Correct. Yeah, someone is saying that can we use webhooks for instead of polling queues? We can, yes. Yeah, you can use webhooks to push the messages to this particular from the messaging queue to the notification service. Yeah, there can be 2 mechanisms, a push mechanism or a poll mechanism. You can do anything. That is perfectly fine. Yeah, so we have talked about the modeling. So this is known as what? System design modeling. Now, what is the next part we should talk about? So then generally once you talk about this, then the next part which you talk about is how do you scale, correct? So your system will scale up in future. So scaling, there are 2 types of scaling which you generally talk about. The first is horizontal scaling, where you keep on adding more resources, correct? Add more resources into your system. And what will you do for, then the second one is vertical scaling. In the vertical scaling, what do? You replace the current resource with the larger resource. The problem with this kind of a system is that it could be possible that there might be some downtime if you do a vertical, might be a downtime. There are ways to actually, not have downtimes as well, but might have downtime if you do a vertical scaling. And in case of horizontal scaling, you have to maintain, I mean, the complex as you have to maintain copies, right? Complex as there are multiple resources, machines performing the same action. So maybe you'll need a load balancer in these cases, and then you have to have a right strategy to balance your load, performing the same operation or performing the same operation. And once you're done with the scaling, then you talk about what? Sharding of the data. How do you shard this data? Correct. So see, you might want to shard the data because there is like a lot of users and events, and this might keep on growing. So you can't store everything in one table. So you can do a logical level sharding. You can do it in the SQL database as well. I'll show you how to do it. So logical level sharding you can do, where you say that all the user data from A to Z will A to B will go to a separate shard. All the user data with starting with B. So there are two ways to do a sharding. So one is range-based sharding, and then the second one is hash-based sharding. So in case of range-based sharding, you create a range. So in case, let's say if you do a range-based sharding, then let's say all the user names or all the email IDs starting with A will go to one shard, with B to one shard, with C to one shard, up to Z. You can create a separate shard. And let's say even if this is becoming heavy, then you say AA to AP will go in one shard, and AQ to AZ will go in another shard. Even this is becoming heavy, you can further distribute it. So you keep doing this. So, or you can, in the range based sharding, there is based on dates. So here based on starting of the email ID. You can do on based on dates as well, but here it's not a good idea. But range based sharding can be done based on date. For that, for example, let's say if you want to just see the data, latest data, right? You don't really care about the data which was like 1 year back. So in that case, you can do range based sharding as well. Okay, so that is helpful. What happens in case of hash based sharding? So you create a hash value, hash key for some of the, for let's say for ID, user ID, correct, in this case. And there is a hash function and a hash function. And I don't know if you are aware of consistent hashing or not, but generally you prefer consistent hashing whenever you talk about the sharding. See, if you simply do a sharding, then you need to know the how many machines, there will be fixed number of machines, right? And if you have fixed number of machines, then there will be issues with those, because if you add another machine, then your hash function will change. So basically all these you need to know what is consistent hashing, and you need to get into the details of that. And I'll be taking those sessions going forward as well. Like we'll have more ad hoc sessions, and then we'll be having a specific batch as well where we'll talk about these sessions. So I mean, you can join those to get more details, but let's complete this design and we'll talk about all those things at a later point. Okay. So these are hash based sharding and range based sharding. Start of the email ID. Now what you do here, maybe you can do a hash based sharding based on the hash of the user ID. You can create a sharding. And now, do you need a replication? And see, if you're creating it globally, right, then you can say that for every region we'll have a separate shard. So you can say that region based sharding you can do. So that is again part of your range based, right? So you can say that region based sharding you're doing. So so you can do mix of, so here also you can do a mix of horizontal and vertical scaling. And here also you can do a mix of range and hash based sharding. So first you say that for every region I'll have a shard and logical sharding, and within that particular region I'll have a hash based sharding. So you can do a hash based sharding. Now then you talk about the replications. In case of replications, you say that you will replicate. So either you can have a master slave configuration or a master configuration, depending on your requirement. Here, because what we want to do, we want to maintain a consistency, and we want to all of them to read the data at the same time. So maybe we'll prefer because it's a read heavy system. So you can say that I'll prefer a master slave configuration with writes at the same time on all the masters and slaves. But there are some issues, right? There is the latency will increase in this case. So how to mitigate those, we will talk in detail because I can't cover everything in detail here. But you can say that you can have a master slave configuration where you read from write into masters, write to master, and sync data with slaves on real time, not asynchronously, with some slaves, not all the slaves. Okay. And in case read the data always from slaves. Okay. So these are the replications which we have. Now, after that, we already talked about authentication authorization. So I don't need to go on to that part. Load balancing, we have already talked about. So I'm not going on to that as well. And caching, do we need a caching here? Maybe you can use a cache. You can say that I'll cache the data for next. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? I mean, caching is not very much required. If you know that there is some famous personality and so many people will search for their calendar, maybe you can cache the data for those people in that case. So you can have a cache and you can say that those 20% of the users who are very frequently using my calendar, you can cache their calendar at the service layer, basically at the backend layer, so that you can directly get the data, their calendar for the for returning the data. Correct. So these are the, so you can have a cache, but here it doesn't, not required here, not required. Maybe we can write may try to cache the data for users who are invited in so many meetings. Basically, you know that these are famous personalities, right? Famous users, something like this. You can have. Correct. You can cache this data. And then you talk about what? Authentication authorization. We have already discussed that part. Any questions on authentication and authorization? Here we will just need an authentication. We don't need an authorization, right? So authentication should be fine. We have discussed how to do an authentication, right? Basically, login API will pass some tokens. You can say this JSON web tokens to the client, and after login, all the requests will contain web tokens as well as and user ID for which the request is sent. And what do? At web or front end layer, you will verify, you will authenticate the user with the web tokens passed and the user ID passed is a part of the request. I hope this is clear to everyone. Yeah, as I mentioned, right, you can have, you can have DDoS. To handle DDoS, you can have a rate limiter or API gateways as well. But I mean, because of the time constraint, I didn't go into the details of that. So you can have something like, you can have a rate limiter where you say that if these many requests are coming from, like, let's say thousands of requests are coming from this particular IP address within a window of 1 minute, then you will start rejecting those requests. You can have the firewalls in place. You can have API gateways in place that will help you to stop any kind of attacks in your system. Okay. Generally, rate limitings are preferred and rate limiters are preferred, and you can have rate limiters where you say that you have, you will track the IPs from which you're getting the request. And you say that if you receive like more than 1,000 requests from a particular IP within the 1 minute, then you'll start rejecting those requests because that might be some kind of an attack which is happening to your system. Okay. So this is about your authentication authorization. And as I mentioned, so we talked about replication. So these are the detailed design. So you should spend around 20 to 25 minutes on this part. It could be possible that you might not be able to cover everything, correct? But I mean, and your interviewer might ask you for a particular, details about particular things. So you should try to focus on those in that case. And but otherwise, if the time permits, then you should talk about all these things in detail. And like this right now, it is taking me time to explain because I'm explaining, it is taking time. But in general, once you practice like enough questions, right, it should not take more than 25 minutes to come up with all these things. I'll stop here. If there are any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can put your questions on the chat. I'll try to answer those. Otherwise, we'll move on to the monitoring and alerting and backup. Okay, any other questions? Any confusion here?
Hey Prakhar, so I just want to understand about the recurring meeting. So how we will handle the recurring meeting in this system?
Recurring meeting in the system that you can
Yes.
handle, right? See, you what you can do is you can say that when you are creating the invite, right? Let's say if you want to send you have to create a recurring event, recurring meetings, right? You will do you want to create the recurring meetings for like next infinite time, or you want to create it for like a finite time?
Yes, for the finite time.
Let's say you have to create it for the finite time, right? So you have the event ID here. Sorry, you will what you know the create event API, correct? You know the
Yes.
event details. Let's go to the our create. You know the event create event. You know the
Yes.
event details. You know the list of user IDs which we have to with which I have to create, correct? Now in the event details, you will get the information to actually you should know that at what time you like at what frequency do you want to create, so that you'll take as an input of the event details itself. And what
Okay.
you do is you can have a business logic at your this layer calendar invite event service, and you say that because you can always the current date, correct? And let's say if I have to create an event for after every 7 days, so can I say that after every 7 days I'll create another event in my system. So I'll
Okay.
create another event ID, correct,
Okay.
for each of those events. And I can
Yes.
say that they can be attached, all these events can be attached to a particular ID, right? So you can generate some UUID and attach all these events to that particular ID, correct? So
Okay.
that if you want to delete, you can delete all the events together, right? And you
Okay.
store that UUID as a part of your table. And you will have separate event IDs, because if you might want to cancel one particular event as well, correct? Or
Yes.
update one particular event as well. And your logic will lie in this calendar event service there. So you can know that after every 7 days, up to 4 weeks, I have to create. So that logic will be there. So it will calculate the durations and it will put all those events in your table.
Okay. Okay.
Understood?
Yes. Yes.
User doesn't need to handle, user just need to pass those event details as a part of the request, right? And your calendar invite service should have a business logic to calculate all the durations and the event time at which I have to schedule this, correct? So let's say you say that every Monday for next 4 weeks. So it should know that it should be able so it knows the current date. You can take the current system current date, correct? And then it should know the like when the next Monday will appear based on your time zone, correct? So you know the time zone of the user as well, correct? And
Yes.
you can take that as an input, and you can you can calculate your system, this service can calculate that. You can write a logic with a frequency of 4 after every Monday, so you calculate next 4 Mondays, and you create a separate event in your event table.
Okay. Okay.
Understood?
Yes. Yes. Thanks.
Oh, yeah. Then there is another question: should there be a API gateway funding? Okay, usually get questions in detailed design to identify what's wrong with the current design, how to fix that. Yeah, I mean it depends. Your interviewer might ask you. So generally, it's not about what's wrong. What they ask is like, can you handle some of the other things as well, right? So someone like I was not considering like multiple events or recurring events case, correct? So I mean your design should be flexible enough to actually satisfy the further needs as well. So generally the questions will be asked on that. I mean, no one will directly, I mean, if your design is correct, no one will say that your design is wrong. There is always a scope of improvement. And based on the requirements given to you, if you have designed good enough, then I think it should be fine. If they ask you to actually have something specific as well, then you can try to include those and accordingly change your design. When it comes to sharding, you said you won't recommend date-based sharding. Why? In this case, because it's a calendar invite, right? So here you might you might want to fetch the calendar for like you really don't fetch the calendar only for 1 or 2 days, right? So it doesn't make sense to do a date-based sharding. Instead, it's better to do a user-based sharding for a particular user. So you won't have the request where you will say that, give me last 100 events created. Correct. Date-based shardings are generally useful where you need to, let's say if I want to fetch, give me like last all the transaction in last 1 day. In that case, it's better to have a days-based sharding. Here you will always query based on the user ID, right? So it's better to create a shard based on the user instead of creating it on the piece of date. Again, depends on the use case, what do you want to do. How do we handle if there is no end date for a recurring meeting? I mean, you can put, so what you can do is, like, you have to have some event, right? What you can do is, your calendar should be able to show that. Correct. Again, it's a design. So basically what you can do is you can have some queuing system, and queuing system can take care of creating an event after every 1 day, or basically you can create a single invite and you don't have any end time for that. You just have the starting time, and you actually have basically a queue, and that queue can create an event for next 1 year or 4 years or 10 years, whatever you want to. And what you can do is, when you're creating an event, you don't mention that this is my, you can have an event type as well. Event, I mean, you just have the occurrence time. And instead of having like a date, you can say that this is a recurring event. So you can create a separate kind of an event. And on the UI, you can render it accordingly, right? Because you know that this is the event I have to fetch always. So you know that for this particular user, this is a different kind of an event, which is a recurring event for infinite time. And when you want to render it on the UI, you show that you block that calendar always. So that can be handled with the help of that. Understood, Shubham? I can repeat it if it is not clear. So what I'm saying is, in general, what you can do is, instead of having like event you are creating for finite time, right? So you have the occurrence time. You don't mention any occurrence time. You create a separate event type. You can say that infinitely recurring event, correct? And you always return that event for that particular user. And you can render, and you know the time at which you want to show that event, right? So you know the exact time. You store the time and dates, or what will be the frequency as a part of that event. And you always return that event to the, whenever someone is trying to check the availability of that particular user as a part of the response. And your UI should be able to render the event. So basically your UI, when you are scrolling through the calendar, it should be able to render based on the event, infinitely recurring event. It should be able to render and show that as a blocked space on your calendar. Like Meetup platform user can view events on UI. How can we add it here? You can do that. Why you can't? You can easily do that, right? Here also we have a check availability, right? So basically I mean, it's just a rendering, right? So you are returning the list of events to the client, and then client can render it. If you want to show the list of events for a particular day, then what you can do is you can say that for this particular day, so you are storing the recurring time, the occurrence time. So you can create you can create a index on the top of your occurrence time, and you say that within this time to this time, give me all the events for this particular user. So you can have a user ID comma occurrence time, something like that. On if you have on Meet, then that is what is happening, right? On Meet, you have the user ID, and you know the date range. So basically from time to time, you can query on the database, and you can get the events and show it onto the client. Is that clear, Swapnil? Okay. I mean, you can handle the conflicts, right? But you don't, I mean, you can notify, you can say that there are multiple events, but how do you, I mean, you don't really care about, I mean, in general, you can schedule 2 events at the same time as well on the calendar, right? So calendar is not stopping you to schedule another meeting. It just tells you that there is a conflict. So when you are actually returning the availability of all the users, it will show it as a conflicting meeting. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the next part, which is your monitoring and alerting. So what do you do in monitoring, alerting, and backup? So generally you talk about multiple things in monitoring alerting. So why do you need a monitoring system? Just to make sure that your system is behaving as expected, and you can monitor that, uh, the number of users which you have assumed are correct, the QPS which you have assumed is correct. So that helps you do monitoring. So you can have monitoring, you can do multiple kind of monitoring here. So let's talk about monitoring. So you can say that monitoring on the latency of each of the API that you can have, that will help you to figure out, helps to check if the APIs are not taking long time to return the response. Right? Then you can have monitoring on the failures, or you can create a graph on the failures, monitoring on failures, monitoring on success and failure rate, basically. Right? You should know that how many APIs are success. I mean, how many calls are passing, how many calls are failing. Then you can have alerts if the latency is high. Correct. You can have alerts. You can define a threshold value for alerts, right? Like if it has crossed a particular threshold, then you should alert. You can have success to failure ratio, or failure to success ratio. And you can have a threshold value for this, and you can say that you'll send an alert if that threshold is crossed. Then you can have alert based on the resource consumption. If your resources are consumed more than 90%, right? Then you can have resource consumption alerts as well. Correct. And monitoring as well on the resource consumption, how many resources have been consumed for the machines which you have in place. Resource consumption. Correct. So these are alerting and monitoring which you can have in general. You can have some other monitoring as well, right? How many users are creating events on a daily basis. You can have another monitoring system like how many users are canceling or updating events. If you can do some improvements with the help of this, you can have monitoring on this as well. Correct. And then there are backups. Why do you need a backups? You need backups to make sure that you can create some product metrics, right? Like how many users have total signed in, product metrics, to see how your product is growing, right? So basically, this will help you to do future capacity planning, right? Let's do future capacity planning and check how your system is growing, progressing. So, and basically, definitely you need a backup for other reason as well, right? These backups are needed for basically, you can say that these are needed for data recovery sometimes. Correct. Basically, if there is something goes down, then you should be able to recover the data. So that's why you need backup. So you can talk about these things as well as a part of your design, but only if the time permits, right? You can create some experiments and you can create experiments and monitor on backup, like how is the output. Correct. Basically, you can say that I'll give maybe some kind of another notification you want to send, and if you see that the acceptance rate is more in those cases, then maybe that is, you run an experiment and you monitor those experiments. So you can do that as a part of your you can monitor those on the backups, and you can create the experiments in your system. So these are generally monitoring, alerting, and backups which you can talk about if the time permits. This you should not take more than 2 to 3 minutes to talk about these things. This is basically for the improvements which you can do in your system. And then you can have the last thing, if they still have time, then you can future possibilities. What else can you add in your system, right? So that can go as a first future possibilities in your system. Okay. So you talk about all these things in detail, and I think that is good enough for a particular design. So if you'll see here, we covered requirements, functional and non-functional requirements. We talked about all the estimations which we need. Then we talked about detailed design, all the APIs which we need. Then we talked about all the tables which we need, the messaging queue which we need. We talked about the system design modeling, how we'll model your system. Talked about scaling, sharding, replications, caching. Here it is not required. Maybe you can cache it for the user who are very famous. Authentication, authorization, and then we talked about monitoring and alerting. And if the time permits, then future possibilities. This is good enough for any design problem. If you cover all these things in detail, you will, it's highly likely that you will be, your interview will go well and you'll be selected for the next. Okay, cool. So that is all I had to discuss. How about building an analytics pipeline? So basically, yeah, you can build an analytics pipeline on in case of on the backups, right? That's why you have a backup, right? You can do analysis on the top of backups. You should not do it on the live database because that might hamper the performance of your system, because might have like a lot of read write queries. And if the time permits, should we talk about other database? We'll use Mongo. See, you don't need to go at that level, like which database type you will use. You can say that I'll use a SQL database or NoSQL database. Correct. Type of messaging queue, again, you don't need to talk about that. Which particular type you will use, you don't need to say. Tell that, you can mention that you use a messaging queue. Correct. It can be any messaging queue, right? Now, like which one is, it could be possible that your interviewer might not be aware of Kafka. I haven't used Kafka ever. So I don't know what is Kafka, how Kafka works. So you don't need to talk about Kafka. You should talk about messaging queue as a concept. In general, you should talk about concepts instead of, the implementations in case of system design problems. Okay. Yes, you can definitely talk about the indexes which you need to create on the table, like we did here, right? Where if you want to fetch all the latest events for a particular day, then maybe we can have an index on the top of it. But do you really require that in this case? Generally, you won't see all the events, right? You will pull the complete calendar. So in that case, yeah, you can just send a query to the calendar and you can request for a particular date range. So yeah, you can create a index with user ID, comma, the date from and to dates for that. Okay. Yeah, so that's it from my side. I don't have, if you have any other questions, I can feel free to ask those questions. I can take those questions. As I mentioned, there is a batch starting for high level design and a low level design. That will be starting in end of January sometime. And if you're interested, you can reach out to LearnBay and you can sign up for the batches. I was not able to cover a bunch of things in detail. In general, when we'll have the batch, we'll cover like everything in detail, like what are the different type of caching, how to do caching, load balancing, CAP theorem, sharding, replication. We'll spend like 2 hours on each of these topics. And then we'll try to do like 5 to 7 system high level designs. And then in the low level design, we'll try to cover some of the important design patterns. Then we'll talk a bit about the database designs, and then we'll go on to talk about some of the problems which you get as a part of the interview, like designing a parking lot or designing a hotel management system or designing a library management. So all those will be covered as a part of low level design. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the session. You can use this doc for the reference purpose. I've shared it with all of you. I've pasted the link. And if you have any questions, I can take those questions. Otherwise, we can end the session for the day. I hope you enjoyed the session and you liked it. Okay, great. If there are no further questions, then I'll end the meeting. I can wait for like another minute. You can unmute yourself if you have any other question. Yeah, for for contacting, you can reach out to LearnBay for any other further details. Basically, you might have joined from some platform, right? So you can actually, there might be some contact details shared. If not, then this is my number. You can take this number. I'll redirect you to the person to whom you can talk. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for joining, and thanks for staying for 2 hours and understanding the design. Enjoyed, and thanks for asking so many questions. It was really good. Good that all of you have asked right set of questions, and it always helps to actually it helps others as well to understand like what are the different questions which can be asked in the interview. And thank you so much for asking questions. Thank you. Bye.